How does a nation go from being a close partner to a mortal enemy? How does a friendship, built on strategy and sealed with oil, completely curdle into a rivalry that could set the entire world on fire? To understand how we got here, we have to go back, way back, to a past that's been almost completely forgotten.
And this is where it all ends up, on this one single day. It's not just an end, it's a violent, definitive conclusion. For decades, it was all shadow wars, proxy battles, these whispered threats. But then, it wasn't quiet anymore. It became loud, open, and incredibly destructive.
The world wakes up to news like this, from sources like NDTV, and the headlines are everywhere. They tell you what happened, but they almost never tell you why. That's what we're here for. Welcome to Inside History HD. Together, we will peel back the layers of narratives long locked away in the archives of history.
So our story, it doesn't really start with the bombs of 2026. No, it starts decades earlier, in a time when these two countries were actually allies. It's this incredibly tangled history, and it all hinges on a single moment, a real butterfly effect moment back in 1979 that would end up unleashing a storm of violence almost 50 years down the line.
So let's start there, with this chapter that honestly, looking back now, it feels completely unreal. It's the story of a forgotten friendship, a time before 1979, a time when Tehran and Tel Aviv weren't enemies, they were partners, working together quietly and pragmatically.
Just look at the difference. Before 1979, it was all about practical matters. They had shared interests, oil, military tech, common enemies. You know, the usual stuff that makes countries work together. But after 1979, it completely flips, becomes this existential fight, all open hatred and proxy wars. And there's one single event, one trigger, that caused this complete 180.
I mean, if you really want to understand how deep this friendship went, just follow the money, or in this case, the oil. There's a research paper, Iran, Israel, and Zionism since the Islamic Revolution, that points this out. A staggering 60% of Israel's oil came from Iran. Think about that. That's not just some casual diplomatic relationship. That's a lifeline. It was a core part of their economies and their security.
And here it is. This was the trigger, the 1979 Islamic Revolution. You have to understand, this wasn't just a change in government. This was a complete ideological rewiring of a country. It changed how Iran saw itself, its place in the world, and in the process, it turned allies into enemies, literally overnight.
The Brookings Institution really puts it into perspective. This wasn't just, a political falling out. The revolution transformed Israel from this strategic partner into a symbol, a core ideological enemy. They were labeled the little Satan right behind the great Satan, the United States. And just like that, friendship was out and state-sponsored hatred was in. And this new ideology, well, it wasn't going to just stay as angry words and slogans. Nope, it was about to become very real. It kicked off what we now call the Long Shadow War. And this war would escalate for decades, starting with proxy fights in places like Lebanon and ending with direct, open combat in the skies.
So it all starts in the 80s, right? A classic shadow war, fought using proxies like Hezbollah. But you can only keep something like that in the shadows for so long. It slowly but surely starts to boil over. And then bam! By April 2024, they're trading direct military punches for the very first time. That set a really dangerous precedent. And it didn't take long for it to escalate into the 12-day war in 2025. This was the real deal, a full-blown conventional war.
And that 12-day war, it was absolutely devastating for Iran. Reports like the Strategic Rupture detail how it went down. You had Israel's Operation Rising Lion and the US's Operation Midnight Hammer working together, perfectly synchronized. Israel went after the military command, taking out key leaders. At the same time, the US sent in B-2 stealth bombers to hit the nuclear sites. That 1-2 punch was just a complete strategic disaster for Tehran.
But wait, before we get to that final strike in 2026, something else had to happen first. Iran's power in the region had to be completely dismantled. See, their influence wasn't just about them. It was projected through this whole network of allies they'd built up. And that network, it was about to get shattered.
This network had a name, the Axis of Resistance. This was Iran's #1 tool for flexing its muscles across the Middle East. They had allies in Lebanon, Syria, all over the place. And the goal was simple:
counter Israel and the US and create this unbroken line of influence straight to the Mediterranean.
And then it all fell apart. In late 2024, the whole axis just shattered. Analysts, like those at the Sofan Center, lay out exactly how it happened. First, Hezbollah got a lot weaker. Then came the big one. The Assad regime in Syria collapsed on December 8, 2024. That was the linchpin. It physically cut the land bridge Iran needed to supply its proxies. All of a sudden, Iran was strategically alone, completely isolated, and incredibly vulnerable.
And that brings us right back to where our story began. You've got Iran now weakened, totally isolated, its whole network of allies just in ruins. And its enemies? Well, they saw their chance. An opportunity to make one final decisive move and end this 47-year conflict once and for all.
This was Operation Epic Fury, and it was totally different from anything that came before it. The goal here wasn't just to contain Iran, it was to cut the head off the snake. These were joint strikes aimed right at the heart of the regime, and they succeeded. The supreme leader was killed along with over 40 of his top officials. Imagine the chaos. The country was immediately thrown into a massive succession crisis.
So after all the dust settled, who was left to pick up the pieces? Well, this interim council. And it was basically just cobbled together from all these warring factions. You had a moderate president, a hardline chief justice, and a powerful cleric. A totally fractured leadership for a totally fractured nation. And now, they somehow had to figure out how to navigate this impossible crisis.
When you look back at it all, that one stark choice made back in 1979 to throw away a strategic partnership for an ideological war, you just have to ask, right? Was this explosive ending all these decades later, was it just inevitable? It's a sobering reminder, isn't it? The choices being made right now, today, in the halls of power and in the hearts of people. That's the history we'll be talking about tomorrow.